to this episode of the Two Comma Coffee Club. I am Valerie, and my co-hosts, as always, are Lene and Michelle Fitzsimmons. And today, our special guest is Mr. David Breslow, who is a master manifester in the tradition of Neville Goddard and the author of 4 books, which are out on Amazon. The most recent that he published is called Beyond the Words. And it was about a month ago, I'd say probably a month, 5 weeks or a month, that on one of our, another community on Facebook called the Vibe Project, which is by our friend Anila Reddy, and I think some of her associates, that I started seeing I saw you were posting a little bit about your new book, and then we started seeing and sharing amongst us, because we just fell in love with them, your writing and how you explain aspects of manifesting and states and other important concepts that Neville taught through these little mini fictional these little parables, these contemporary parables. That's a great way to put it, Lene. And how cool they are, in like a 2-minute or 3-minute read, or less, and how you started putting that forth. So again, welcome, David, and please share a little bit about how you came to do that, and all, because you have an experience in writing, theater, acting, directing. Right. So the 4 mighty ones: the actor, the producer, the director, all the parts. Right. But please share with us a little bit more about yourself, how you got interested in Neville and got yourself on that track, and then your way of approaching it.
Well, thank you for that lovely introduction, as embarrassing as it might be. But because of my acting background and because of the pandemic, I love to write, and I've written short film scripts in the past. And I was just sitting around one day, and I thought, let me just see if I can write some what I consider to be short stories. They're actually short film scripts in a way. And I just started writing them. I'd wake up in the morning with it about 85% written, and I'd come to the computer and I would just kind of fill in the blanks. I would create a beginning and an end, but basically the body of the story was pretty much already written in my dream. And so I just decided to post one day, and I got this incredible feedback from all sorts of people I didn't even know existed. So I kept going. And honestly, I enjoy doing them. They're actually fun to do for me. It keeps my creative juices going, and it keeps my imaginary juices going. So I basically, to answer your other question, I got to Neville probably about 2 years ago. And the first person I ever heard was this guy called 2020. I don't know if you ever heard of him or not.
No, we didn't.
Okay. All 3 of them say mockingly. Okay. All right. So he was the first person I heard, and I listened to his videos a lot, and then I went and listened, of course, like a lot of people do. I went to YouTube and heard Neville, and like a lot of people, I got turned off almost immediately when he went into the biblical references, because I'm not a biblical person. And I had no idea what he was talking about. And I thought, oh, here we go, another Bible thumper. Yeah. And then I just decided, well, wait a minute, listen a little further. And then I listened more, and I realized what he was actually doing, what he was talking about. He was talking about the Bible in a way that I also agree with, although I'm not a studier of the Bible. I just never really understood how people could argue about all these things, and that basically didn't seem to be true to me in the first place. Yeah. Like, how do they prove who wrote all this stuff? Nobody asked me about it. I don't know what's true and what's not. So then the more I listen to Neville, the more I realize what he's really saying is none of this stuff is real. None of these characters ever existed. Jesus Christ was never described. in the entire scriptures. He's not 6'3", long brown hair like we see in the movies.
Or
And
white
yeah, white
from
guy.
the Middle East.
Yeah, exactly.
With golden long hair.
And so the more I listened, the more I realized he's saying a lot of the things that I'm kind of shaking my head, nodding, going, yeah, yeah. And then when I was able to separate that from the actual insights about imagination, then I really got turned on by what he was saying. And I realized that a lot of what he's saying, and he says this all the time, is not new. What was new with him was the way he said it, his clarity. And what I was most impressed with as a wisdom teacher or spiritual teacher, how he's so much more clear and so much less involved in the business of spirituality than the reality of spirituality. So I became a big fan of his, at that point. And that's kind of how it started for me.
Wow. That's
that.
just, yeah, I think we all kind of have had similar experiences in one way or another,
Yeah.
because coming into that kind of teaching, I know for myself, coming from the traditions that I have, which are Eastern philosophy, and so primarily it was a missing piece. And I think we must all feel that in one way or another, that it just met a need that we weren't, or crystallized something that was not, or just felt like it was the right move to make in our journey, that was a homecoming of some kind. So it really has been very powerful that way. And you're choosing, the way it's coming to you, and God, and as a writer, we're all authors here, as a writer, it's such a blessing when you wake up in the morning and you feel like all you're doing is taking dictation, because it's all just just trying to out how fast the words are coming out,
a lot of fun,
which is amazing, just great fun. But that you're sharing that, and I hope you're getting a great response on the way you're approaching it, because these little parables, these little teachings, in contemporary terms, are really a great way to reach people. They're not necessarily always just talking about the concepts as they are, which are great, but it's just a fun way because people can relate. But your career has taken you, at this point, you're in, I think, Nevada, and you're doing whatever you're doing. You're doing out west. And you have a coaching, you are a professional coach, or what is your current
well, that has been my so-called career for a long time. I've always been a coach. And what was fascinating to me was when I heard about Neville, I realized I've been teaching a lot of those things for the last 30 years. I just wasn't using that language.
Right.
I teach, my program is called Wired to Win. 7 laws in 21 days, and completely transform the way you live, work, and play. Now, I'm not teaching any of the laws that Neville talks about. The laws that I talk about are laws by which the mind, body, and emotions work together to produce outcomes in everybody's life. But laws are laws. And here's what became so interesting to me, and I don't know if you want to go in this direction or not, but, and if you don't, just let me know. We'll go back to the war stuff if you want to do that. But it just became so obvious to me, and Neville mentions this many times, that we've been manifesting our entire lives since we've been on this planet.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, everybody's confused. How do I manifest?
I know.
How do I change my self-concept? I'm like, well, how do you move your fork? How do you move your fork from your left hand to your right hand? I don't know. Oh, yeah, you do. You make a decision.
Yes.
Are you kidding me? And so my nickname in the coaching field for the last 30 years has been Mr. Simple, because I see things so simply. People call me all the time and they download their story times 10, and I listen to it for about 5 minutes, and then I stop them and I say, look, that's enough. That's enough of the story. So, and they go, oh, don't you need to hear my story to help me? And I go, no, not really.
Oh, no.
Not really at all. Besides, you told me the same story 10 different ways in the last 5 minutes.
Let's just do now.
Yes, it's amazing. I said, if you understood the law, which you don't yet, you would know that the more you tell this story, the more you're doomed to repeat that experience. Now, that's a law, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, a law is something very simple. It's true for everybody, everywhere, at all times. No gray area, no yeah buts, No, maybe here, maybe not. It's a law. And so when Neville talks about the law of assumption, it's exactly the same as the law of gravity or physics or any other law in this universe. There's no getting away from it. You can't get around it. All you can do is ignore it, but you cannot stop the way that it functions ever. So I've been talking like that for 30 years, and I was always considered the anomaly, of course, the guy over in the corner. What the hell is he talking about? But I've always been that way. I've always been the guy. I'm pretty sure you guys have probably done that too. I've always
we're
been
the guy.
Yeah, the guy talking about the stuff that other people aren't talking about. But stuff happens, and that's all I care about. Is changes are happening with people. Now with this imagination thing, that has become actually kind of law number 5 or 6 for me, was about imagination, but I wasn't using that word. I was using another word. But the more I listen to Neville and the more I learn about it, it's really the same thing that's happening. So it's just so funny to me that people are all of a sudden very confused and they don't understand it. I'm like, how could you not understand something you've been doing since birth?
Which reminds me,
everybody's a master manifester.
Yeah, and like it's like saying all of a sudden you don't understand the law of gravity. How do I jump?
Thank you.
Now.
Yeah.
Thank you. You're Lene, right?
Yes.
Yes, you're Lene. Thank you, Lene. That's exactly the that's exactly the example that I use too, because when I say these things, people are kind of taken aback, and I go, "Look, here's the proof," because I prove everything I say.
Right.
And like Neville,
I love that.
If you don't like it, go prove it. Go do it. You'll see.
Yeah.
But I prove everything I say. Look, here's the reality. Because I'll tell people your belief is not required, and your opinion is completely irrelevant when it comes to the laws. They don't give a darn what you think.
Yep.
And they go, "Oh, you telling me my belief doesn't matter?" Because they don't hear that anywhere. Can you imagine some corporate executive being told your belief doesn't mean a darn thing? And he or she goes, "Are you kidding me?" And I go, "Look, I'll prove it to you right now. Here's the proof. You and I are up in an airplane. We're going to parachute. We're the only ones in the plane besides the pilot. The door opens. It's your turn. I'm going to let you go first because I've never done it before. So you go stand by the door. And before you step out, you turn to me and you go, "Dave, I don't believe in gravity. Never have, never will." And you're like really adamant about it. I'm going to look at you and go, "Okay. What happens when you step out?" And they go through all these gyrations. I go, "Just like simplify it, dude. What happens when you step out?" "Oh, I'm going down." Exactly. Okay, you're going down. So the point is that gravity doesn't care what you think about it. Doesn't care whether you believe it or not. Doesn't care what your opinion is of it. You're going down.
I love it.
That's the way it is. I got nothing to do with it. It's not my theory. It's not my opinion. You're going down.
Yeah.
And they all
just
get
make
that.
sure you pull the chute, otherwise you'll go down a hell of a lot faster than me.
Otherwise, yeah, you're going down in pieces. In that case,
but gravity won't care about that.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I said gravity won't even care about that.
No, it doesn't care about anything. It's completely neutral. It's like one of my favorite lines from the movie A Few Good Men, when Kevin Bacon is talking to what's his name in the bar before the trial starts, and he goes, "Look, I represent the government without passion or prejudice." And that's the way I look at the laws. They operate without passion or prejudice. They're the same for you as they are for me. They don't care any more about what I think about it than when you think about it. The law just produces an outcome. That's what it does. Totally neutral. And everybody gets that. Once I explain it to them, they go, "Yeah, I can see that." What they don't get is that their life is also under the influence and governed by laws that are just as precise, just as predictable, just as undeniable and provable as gravity. And that's where my program begins from that point on. So Neville, for me, was like the perfect next step, in my opinion, for me.
Yeah.
I loved what he's saying. I always love what he says. I think it's fantastic.
And he had a way of saying it, that really strikes you very deep. It's like some part of it is it's his voice, it's his intensity about it, right. and his absolute that he had that faith because he had the experience, and
Right.
and that's what it's always about. A real spiritual master in anything will never say, "Yo, just follow me blindly." They always say, "It's the proof is in what you experience yourself."
You
Right.
have to experience it.
Well,
Everything
they
comes
will
from
if they're Jim
experience.
Jones. They'll say, "Come
Yo,
with me."
I was about to say.
By the way, I have some Kool-Aid if you want something
Yeah.
to drink.
That's right.
Oh,
We have
it's
the-
about cults around here.
But
Yeah.
so many of us are seeking that people like that can get swept in to somebody who has
Yeah.
that charisma, like a Hitler. Hitler
Yeah.
had charisma, and I think with Neville, as I hear you saying that about him, to me, the word clarity jumped into my head. I think the reason he comes off so beautifully is because he's so clear
Yeah.
about what he's saying, and he lived it. Even when he talks about death, I died. I know what's going to happen to you. You're going to go back. You're going to be about 25 years old. You're going to be gorgeous, and you're not even going to know you're dead. And I don't know if anybody ever heard that story,
Yes,
but
and that trips me
have.
out. That trips me out when I think of that.
incredible.
Yeah, it could
it's
have already
really-
happened, and like none of us know this.
None of us know.
We don't
Yeah,
realize.
none of us knows. But
We could all be
because
dead now.
That's
You wouldn't
right.
even know. That's right. No, they actually because I have studied the Hindu and the Eastern for years and years, and one of their important statements is like the yogi that who sits like in the meditation, and the ones you see in the cave and they're like this, and but it actually says their body could literally drop away, they wouldn't even notice it, so it's really because they're so firmly centered in that space,
Right.
or that other concept, which is one of my favorites because it's such a brain teaser. You have to die before you die, which
Right.
means that ego idea, all those concepts have to go. The
Right.
old man has to die, as
Right.
we say. And so that's a large part of it, so that when you physically die, you don't die. You already know you're continuing. You are that eternal
Well,
being.
I love that idea about going back to 25. That'd be cool.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't need
Well,
any
here's
Botox.
another little interesting sidelight. If nobody has seen the book before, there at the beginning, I have like an acknowledgement page, like a lot of people do. Thank you, so and so. And at the end of it, it's a very short page. And at the end of it, I'm thanking my mom, who's in her 90s, who I still consider to be the coolest lady that I know. And I write that in there. And when she got the book, of course, she was beside herself reading that. But what's interesting to me is that she was diagnosed with MS in the 60s when there was no internet. She never heard about Neville. She did all this stuff at that time, totally turned off by the doctors. She left the hospital, came back home, healed herself. Took her about 12 years, but she went on her own journey. And when I told her about Neville, she kind of went, "Yeah," okay, so. And I went, "Well, that's what a lot of people are talking about now." She goes, "Yeah, I know, I did that because I know all about it. I just never heard of him." And so she's now, well, that's what she did though. She didn't know she was doing that.
Yeah.
And it took her 12 years because she was going through other steps, and she had her own bridges of incidents and blah, blah, blah. And it was just, I was in high school at the time, and it was hilarious to me that she would leave the hospital. And one day I opened up the door, the bell rang. I opened up the door, and there's one guy there with a seeing eye dog and a walker. And he comes walking in, he goes, is Rachel here? I said, yeah. I didn't know who it was. And it's just like in the movies, when they just about to close the door and then there's somebody else there.
Yeah.
And they just about to close the door and there's a third person. It was like that for about 10 people. Basically what happened is she went back to the hospital and she convinced the group in her MS group that all they did was sit around talking about how bad they felt. So she said, "I'm out of here."
Oh my gosh.
And she convinced them to all come to the house. She said, "What we're going to do is we're going to talk about one part of your body that feels good. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's the skin on your elbow. That's what we're going to talk about." So she already understood that shift in mind of what to focus on. And that was way before she knew any of this stuff. I was born with a much more of this knowledge than she was. She went and learned it through experience by going from place to place and ashram to ashram in the United States, different places. She went to Europe, all these places where she's learning about all these things about the mind-body relationship. And she would come back home and tell me about it. And I go, same thing. I go, yeah, duh. I've known that my whole life. She said, how do you know that? I said, I don't know. I just seem to know it. I don't know where it came from. But it took her 12 years. And she wrote her own book, actually, a few years ago called Who Said So? And that was basically her attitude. Because when I was talking to her, I said, what was your attitude when the doctors came in and laid down this death sentence to you? I'm sorry, you have MS, crippler of young adults. There's nothing we can do for you. And she said, her immediate response was, who said that? Who said so? I said, there's the title of your book.
I love that.
And it's basically
I pulled it up on my
Name,
phone.
David, in case people want to check your mum's book out. What's your mum's name?
It's Rachelle, Rachelle, same last name as mine. Her book is also on Amazon. Even if you just even Google my name on Amazon, can you do that? Can you Google my name on Amazon?
In the search bar, you can
And the title here says, Who Said So? A Woman's Journey of Self-Discovery and Complete Recovery from Multiple Sclerosis by Mrs. Rachelle, Rachelle, Breslow, right here. So out in paperback and Kindle, and it's right here. Wonderful picture of her on the cover.
We often give people's book titles, or we talk about a book and we don't ever give the full name and the author's name, and we get so many emails from people saying, could you please give us the name of that book that you said in that episode? Which reminds me, a shout out to Kathleen Bruins. If you are watching, thank you. We received your email and we have finally answered it. It got lost amongst all the others. We're sorry.
Well, thank you for doing that. That was nice. Thank you.
But definitely. Well, I'm interested in reading your mum's book as well as yours.
Well, hers is more of her actual story. Mine is more of it actually started out with people on that Vibe site that you mentioned earlier. They wanted me to write a book of stories. They wanted me to put all my stories because I got about, I don't know, 35, 40 of them at this point. And they thought it would be a nice idea to write a book with all of my stories in it. So as I started writing, it actually started morphing into imagination. So it literally became a guide. It could be a beginner's guide, or even people who've been in the spiritual game for 30, 40 years are sending me these testimonials that are saying, hey, I've been doing this stuff for years. And you were able to put everything I've done in 40 years into one little place that I'm going to go back to instead of my 35 books in my bookshelf, that kind of thing. And I didn't intend to write a book about imagination, but I basically, as I was writing, it kind of morphed into that. And I just basically added about 5 or 6 stories at the end of it, just to put them in there, because there's a lot of people who don't know about the stories. The only place I post those stories is on that Vibe site on the Facebook page. It's the only place I do it. So they're the only ones that know about it. And I'm sure it's a very limited audience there. I think they have a few thousand followers, but you know what it is on Facebook. You got your 10, your 15, or your 20 that, respond to things regularly. Everybody, most other people are lurking around. Just kind of pick up stuff and, nothing really happens, but that's what they do. That's kind of human nature.
Well, we don't miss one of your stories because we have a little group in our Facebook Messenger, and so we don't miss it. Val posts the new one in our Facebook Messenger group so that all of us have got it.
No pressure
and
there.
I love it. It's my little bit of inspiration, of imagination for the day. I love them.
So fitting.
Thank you.
Whatever we're dealing with that day.
It's very apt.
It spells it out, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the lesson for the day.
Yeah, there it is. It's a great way. It's really such a great way, and nice short length. Since people don't have the attention span that they used to,
Right.
and it's
That's
getting
true.
shorter.
That's
You know,
true.
do you have other you teach the wired method,
Wired to win.
wired to win,
Mhm.
but you also, way back, you were involved, maybe you still are to some extent, with the golf community, and so some of your teaching really got into that, and that too is a very, working with people who are in elite athletes, or
Right.
in golf or tennis or any of those other things. There is a huge science of imagination that can really help those
Right.
people.
Well, that's actually where it all started. I was a tennis player when I was younger and a hockey player. And when I put together this program, it came as a direct result of my incredible failure as a tennis player. And because I was one of those guys that looked really good, but when they held up the balls and said, "These are good," and you started to play a match, I disappeared. I was a mess, a mental mess. And I was playing a big match in New York one day, and I lost in the first round at the National Tennis Center in New York. And I was so upset. I went to my car and I was crying like crazy. I'm 18 years old, 19 years old. I'm literally on my knees in the parking lot, banging the roof of my car with my rackets, and then falling to my knees, crying. Why do I keep doing this? Why do I keep putting myself through this? Why don't I just stop? And all of a sudden, when I quieted down, I heard this voice that said, "Why don't you go back to what you knew when you were younger?" Because I always understood when I was younger, this mind-body relationship thing. I didn't know why. It was always really weird. People used to come around me and stand really close. It was very uncomfortable for me. They would ask me questions as a 9 or 10-year-old, and I'm thinking, what are you asking me about relationships for? What the hell do I know about any of this
Yeah.
stuff? But they're asking me all these questions and I'm answering them. And I'm like, where did that come from? So
True.
when I heard that voice, I went back home that night and I basically put together the 7 Laws program, and I named it Wired to Win. And I went to the tennis community and I went to the golf community. And I'm basically taking the posture or the place of the sports psychologist, but there is zero psychology. And I used to say to everybody, I have a program that has no psychology, no tips, no strategies. And they would look at me and go, you can't do that. How can you help people without psychology, without tips, without strategy? I said, well, I'm teaching laws. And they didn't know what I was talking about. So I basically went to the National Tennis Center and I said, hey, I got this program. And I said, instead of me explaining it to you, give me one of your horrible junior players and I'll work with him and let him tell you if I'm any good or not. So guess who they sent me? I don't know if you guys are probably not old enough to remember this guy, but if you ever heard of John McEnroe.
Yes.
Okay, the bad boy of professionals.
Yeah.
They sent me this kid. I still remember his name. This was 40 years ago. Timothy Fulton.
Oh,
He was a left-handed, red-headed Irish kid with a temper just like McEnroe's, and they send him to me. He comes walking in, and first thing he says to me is, "Are you a psychologist?" And I go, "No." And he goes, "Good, thank God." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because they've sent 3 of them to me, and I hate them all." I said, "Well," I said, "I'm not a big fan of them either." He goes, "Really?" I said, "Yeah, I'm not going to do that to you. I'm going to teach you laws. You don't even know what I'm talking about." So basically, I spent 3 sessions with him. I got up to law number 3, and I'm walking through the hallway of the tennis center, and the manager stops me. She grabs my arm and stops me, and I'm thinking, uh-oh, is this good or is this bad? I don't know. She goes, "What did you do to Tim?" I'm like, should I tell her the truth or should I lie? I don't know what to do. So I said, well, I did what I told you I was going to do. I'm teaching him the laws. I said, why? She goes, he's an angel. What happened? He's out on the court every Friday. We play these junior matches with all the better players in the tri-state area. And he's not cheating anymore. He's not yelling anymore. He's not throwing his racket anymore. He's calling the lines fairly. He's not getting into arguments with the umpire. What the heck did you do? I said, well, basically, he understands how powerful he is now, even up to law number 3, and we're not even done yet. He now understands his power, and he now understands what he's been doing and how he's been misusing it. Now he's choosing to use it. I didn't tell him to do anything. Because he's awake now and conscious, he's choosing to use it in a much different way than he was before when he was sleeping. He had no choice before.
Jump.
Yeah, he had no choice before. He was sleeping. You guys never woke him up, and the therapist never woke him up because they don't look at it that way. All they did was dump more information on a player who was already sleeping, and he couldn't even hear them.
Yeah,
That was my big contention. So then I moved into the golf world, and did the same thing. But the golfers seemed to be more receptive to it. That's why I hung out there longer. They gobbled it up even more because golfers are crazy. They're always looking to try to improve any way they can, any edge they can get. They're looking for. So I became kind of this name in the golf world. But once again, this untraditional, non-traditional approach, and a lot of people had trouble with it, especially the upper level, management of golf. You can't offer a program without psychology, without tips, or without strategy. That's impossible. I said, well, I've been doing it for 15 years. Go ahead and get it. I got one online. You can buy it for $97. You'll see for yourself.
There you go.
That's how all that started.
Yeah, we're winding down. We've got about 4 minutes left, a little bit. So let our audience know, David, where they can find you if they wanted to reach out to you, and website or other means of connecting.
Well, if you're interested in the book Beyond the Words, you can go to Amazon and just type my name in there. You'll see it. If you want to know more about me, you can go to davebreslow.com. It's not David, it's davebreslow.com. If you happen to be a golfer or know a golfer, I have a specific dedicated golf site called mentalgolfcoaching.com. Those are probably the best ways to get a hold of me. And I'm more than happy to hear from people all over the world. I love talking about this stuff. But we never got to talk about the war stuff. Maybe some other time we'll do that.
Yes, we'd love to have you back. That would be really fantastic. It would be great to have you again. We can talk about lots more things or new things as they arise too. And it's always fun to have that opportunity. But we're so happy that our audience has to have you on, that our audience had a chance to meet you and discover what you're about. And they can still find your stories if they're on Facebook and they want to take a look at the Vibe Project, which is called Neville Goddard Inspired, it says in parentheses, that they will pretty much find. You run a story about what, once a week, once a day, or they run pretty frequently.
There's no rhyme or reason. It's kind of whenever I'm really moved to. Like lately, I've put something up there almost every other day for about a week and a half. But they're not all stories. Sometimes I'm writing just like little articles.
Saw that last one about imagining. It was a really good, very insightful. I think I shared it with both of you, with Lene and Michelle, that you were talking about imagination in itself, I think. So
right.
That was
I had something there about the universe. Everybody talking about the universe like it's like well, the universe is doing that, and I'm like, no, it's not. The universe isn't doing anything. And then yesterday I put up something in relation to war that I'll bring up if we do talk about war, about this guy Dan who was going to war, and I've certainly gone to war, and we all have gone to war at some point. But some really wonderful insights about going to war that came out of it. So if we ever get a chance to do that, we can get into that a little bit.
Absolutely. You heard it here, Dave. We'll be back.
That would be terrific. I would love that.
Fantastic.
Okay. Thank you
again. So over to you, Michelle, if you want to close.
You guys know you can follow us everywhere at 2 Coffee Club, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And we are also doing a Neville series. It is going to be a summit, and you can find all of the information on imagineyouacademy.com. The dates have been moved to June, so please stay tuned. Tickets will be available soon.
Nice.
That's it.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you again, David.
Thank you, ladies. It was a real joy to be here and meet you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye now.